startup, trusted advisor, do you notice that there's a difference between how much autonomy or how much you can give as opposed to being an order taker? Because in corporate, of course, it comes from above, right? It comes to you. However, I noticed in like scale up and startups, a lot more space for creativity and autonomy and less order taking. I'd love to know your take on that.
So I've actually only worked in organizations, I guess maybe one startup. I understand what you're saying in terms of the culture in startup is more open to the idea of innovation and agility and things like that. In corporations, we tend to be a bit more structured. I would say the answer is still the same. Let me answer it this way. We often try to think about if I just could have a seat at the table, if I could just get in that room and have a seat at that table, I could have a voice, I could make a difference. Maybe they would start treating me better and not as an order taker. They would see that I have value. And then I got in the room and I was a CLO and I realized sitting at their table, it didn't change. I was still being treated like an order taker. They still weren't listening because somebody else had control. Someone else was setting this table. They were determining who was sitting at that table. They were determining how long I could speak for, what the topic was for. There's valuable being in the room, hearing other people's perspective. But I realized we need to stop trying to sit at other people's table. We need to stop trying to get in that other room. And instead, what we need to do is build our own table. And that's not just a bumper sticker or a euphemism. Let me give you an example. One thing that I do at each of my organizations is I create a learning community. And so I will say to my team, hey, pick 5 people who are friends of learning, who like us. We know who doesn't like us. They're the ones that scream the loudest. They fill out all the surveys and caps and tell us how we waste their time. But there are people that do like us. So find those people. Then I send them an email and say, hey, we're starting a learning community. Would love for you to be a part of it. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is show up once a quarter to a virtual call and we'll handle the rest. So then you set that call. You set it for about 60 minutes. Once a quarter, these people come together and you could have, right now I have about 150 in my learning community. And the first 5 minutes of the call, we spend time talking about what we launched the last quarter, just to remind people, hey, this is out there, might want to check it out, because people often forget, or maybe we didn't reach them in our marketing. Then we spend 5 minutes talking about what we're doing for the next quarter so that they see, here's what's coming down the pipeline. Then we spend the rest of the meeting, which is about 40 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, and we just listen. That's it. We ask some specific qualitative questions. You can also think of them as empathy questions, understanding questions, and not necessarily about L&D. So we ask questions like, what's the biggest challenge that you have at work right now? What's the biggest hurdle you need to overcome? What's keeping you from being successful in your job? What are you hearing on the ground about what people are struggling with? Then you can throw in some L&D questions like, the most important one that I think you could ever ask, is there anything else that you need that we're currently not offering? Is there something else that you need to be able to do your job better that we could help teach you that you don't currently have access to? Are there any programs you attended that absolutely blew your mind or that you hated? And we get all of this data. So we have an hour. We're getting all this data. After the meeting, we consolidate the data down and we come up with some problem statements for our business partners. Then we set a meeting with our business partner. We say, hey, we started a learning community. Just wanted to let you know there are 3 things that I learned in this meeting. These 2 business problems exist. Like, this is what people are saying are their biggest hurdle. Now, we can't solve these with L&D, but we wanted to bring them to you to let you know this is happening. And by the way, we did some research, and this business unit over here, they have a similar problem. So maybe you can connect with them and work to solve it. However, there was this third problem that came up, and I think we can solve it with L&D. Here's what I heard. Here's what I think we can do. Are you okay with that? Do you want us to focus on that? This is strategic because you're doing a couple of things. One, your business partner now hears that you are connected to their frontline workers. And they're probably a little bit like, how do you even know this? You say, hey, we started this learning community. So now they start to see you a bit differently. They start to see you as more than an order taker because you do know their business. That is one table. You set that table with your stakeholder. You invited your stakeholder to that table. You controlled the narrative and the conversation. Then you have this second table, this big learning community table. That's your access to the frontline workers. You controlled that table. You controlled who's sitting there, how long you were speaking, what you were talking about. So you can start to see when I say build your own table, what I'm talking about is creating situations where you are in control. A second example of that is this idea of skills. Who owns the skills gap, the skills conundrum, the skills capability in your organization? I would argue we have part ownership in that. It depends how your structure is set up. Some say, oh, HR owns it, talent owns it, maybe L&D owns it. Get in there and take your piece of the pie. So what I mean by that is, why not proactively create a skills advisory council or a skills committee? But the point is, just like the learning community, it's a reoccurring meeting that you are setting, and you're inviting people to come to that meeting to talk about skill gaps. And you bring research to that meeting from the World Economic Forum. You bring research from McKinsey Global Institute. You are the facilitator, the conductor, the puppeteer, the orchestrator, and you're bringing people together to talk about an important topic. It gives you control. It gives you the control of who's at the meeting, what are you talking about, how long are you talking about it, what research are you bringing to the table, and it starts to change your perception. So long story short, the answer to your question is, I believe that in organizations, even if you're hierarchical, even if it's an old institution organization, there are things that you can do to help your business partners see you as a strategic business partner, as a trusted learning advisor. And one of the best ways is building your own table, which means take control. Stop waiting for permission. Stop trying to sit at somebody else's table to be a part of the conversation. There's nothing stopping you from setting up your own meeting and inviting people to that meeting. The one caveat that I would caution you with is you have to make sure that you are prepared, that you are very well prepared. So it's not like you're just sending out an invite and you're inviting people. There's got to be structure. There's got to be a tight agenda. I bring in data. I bring in research. I'm strategic about who's sitting at that table. I don't want to come off overbearing with, this is what L&D says, and this is what I think. Instead, I want to use data. I want to use the voice of the learner in the organization. I want to pull in the quotes from your learning community to be a part of that. I want to pull in research again from World Economic Forum, McKinsey Global Institute, and use that to structure the conversation. So again, we're just positioning ourselves as a trusted advisor. Hopefully that answers your question.
Oh, I love that. I loved all the really concrete examples and specificities that we can do as well. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Valerila?
Yeah, hi Keith.
Hi.
Valeria, yes. Hi Keith. What advice would you give to someone just starting their career as a learning advisor?
Step 1, read the book. Step 2, read this book. Make it stick. This is the most important book that you will read as a learning and development practitioner, even more important than the trusted learning advisor. No one should be able to say they are a learning practitioner unless they've read this book. And I encourage you, if you haven't done a book club, I don't think that you guys have done this book club, but this should be one of the upcoming book clubs you do. So everything that we do in L&D should be rooted in learning sciences. Now, I will tell you, honestly, for the first 12, 13 years of my career, I had no idea there were learning sciences. I just got a job in L&D, luckily, and I started doing it, and then year after year, added on. It wasn't until somebody actually, I think it was this book that really helped turn me onto it. So let me give you an example. Elaboration, learning transfer, interleaving, spaced retrieval, and generation. These are the 5 concepts of learning sciences that you should be integrating into everything that you do, from design, development, execution. Elaboration is giving learners space and time to repeat back what they've learned in their own words. So we learned this in school as reading comprehension. Remember when you had to read something and then you had to kind of explain it back? It's the same thing. A lot of times we are testing and giving assessments where it's multiple choice and they're just having to pick one. But rarely do we create space for them to figure out, what did I just learn? And then how do I explain back what I've learned in my own words? Spaced retrieval. Everybody here should know who Ebbinghaus is, Hermann Ebbinghaus. If you don't, that's somebody that you should be researching. And by the way, he's been dead, so don't look on LinkedIn. But he gave us the forgetting curve. And so his research tells us that by the time you go to bed tonight, you will have forgotten at least 50% of everything I'm telling you right now. The brain just simply cannot retain it all. And then in 2 to 3 weeks from now, you're going to have forgotten 80%. So you're going to remember this much. So we keep creating these learning experiences where we think of it as a start and a stop. You send somebody to a learning event from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and the business is like, great, now they're a leader. No, that's just the beginning. We've just planted seeds. And by the way, in 3 weeks, they're going to have forgotten most of that. So what are we doing to make sure that we have learning sustainment, learning retention, spaced retrieval, so that we can move it from short-term memory to long-term memory? So I don't want to go down this path. I can talk forever about it. Make it stick, the science of successful learning. The 5 characteristics I just shared with you, they're all in this book, written in a very beautiful and digestible way. This is not a heavy technical book. Peter Brown is a great storyteller. He partnered with 2 research professors from the University of Michigan. It's a great book. What I encourage you to do, not only is it maybe a book club here with L&D Shakers, do a book club with your organization. And not just your L&D team, bring your business partners along the journey with you. So part of our evolution from being order takers to trusted learning advisors is our language. We often use our own language and vocabulary. I joined BDO as their chief learning officer about 6 months ago. When I came into the organization, I already had this language, but nobody else had it. So I had a choice. I could come in and start using fancy words like elaboration, interleaving, spaced retrieval, and people would just look at me and not understand what I'm talking about. Or we could do a book club and we could go on this journey together. So then you have another decision. Do you just do a book club with L&D, or do you open it up? So if you do it with L&D, you're creating this silo where just this group has this language and this knowledge. I wanted to expand it and to invite all of our stakeholders and business partners. I want them to go on the journey with us so that it's a shared language. Now, here's where you have to be a bit strategic. I can't just go to my business partners and say, hey, it's a book club on an L&D book. Do you want to join? No, they would all say no. But what I do know is that 80% of my stakeholders have kids under the age of 18, and they want to help them learn better. This book, as a parent, will help you learn better, will help you teach your child how to study better. This talks about things that schools are not doing, unfortunately, and should be doing. So when I went to them, I said, hey, I know you've got a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old. We're getting ready to do a book club. I think it's going to be really impactful for you as a parent. Yes, there's a whole L&D component to it, but I think it's more important for you as a dad or a mom to come and participate. And the answer was yes, most of them did join. And the best thing was, about a month ago, someone reached out to me and their 10-year-old was struggling with homework. They did a book club with their 10-year-old on this book. And the kid came back and his grades started to turn around and he was more aware of improvements he needed to make to hit the way that his study habits. So that was a big win for us. So long story short, make it stick, do a book club here, consider doing it in your organization as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this out of the box ideas. Next in line is Crystal.
Hi, Keith. Nice to meet you virtually. I know we've chatted through LinkedIn before, so finally got the book and was actually making notes and things with it. So one of the questions I kind of wanted to ask, and this is kind of for, a little bit probably for the whole group, but you talked about like some of the power skills, right, to embody. And so I thought maybe, is there one of them that you would like to expand here for the group as we kind of move ourselves into these, trusted advisors? Do you see one of those skills kind of being maybe the biggest gap for us in L&D? So I know for myself, I've been working kind of on the curiosity piece, right? Kind of trying to let go of the notion of being right or providing the right solution. And, trying to ask those questions, right? What is the goal? What impact are you trying to make? Or what really is the change that you're trying to, accomplish? So I didn't know if you wanted to, maybe talk about one of those with the group today.
I would flip that, because I don't believe that one is more important over the other, because it depends on where you are individually on your journey. So one of the things in the book, I intentionally was trying to put a lot of reflection questions in there. So what I would say is, as part of your reflection, figure out where you are with your skills inventory and the ones that you need to focus on. But if I had to pick my favorite child, I would, for me, say it's growth mindset. I think that we're like the cobbler's kids sometimes. And by the way, this is a gross generalization, but I think that we tend to think, yeah, we're in learning, we don't need to keep learning. And we have to be evangelists of being lifelong learners. We're the ones that have to lead by example in this case. And so I think that we have a tendency to maybe have a fixed mindset about it, and it should be a growth mindset. To me, we all should be learn-it-alls rather than know-it-alls. Our goal is not to know everything. There's no way I'm going to know every single L&D practitioner skill and every single tool that's out there, but I need to have an open mind, a growth mindset, to be curious and figure out which tools are available, the vendors, who's using them, why might we use them in one situation over the other. And one of the things I advocate for is we need to have the biggest toolkit possible and have an awareness of each of those tools, but not necessarily be an expert or a know-it-all in them. So you should know the difference between an LMS and an LXP. And the vendors, what's the difference between Degreed and Percipio or Cornerstone? What's the difference between Docebo, SuccessFactors, LearnUpon? Who's using one over the other? Why would you use one over the other? What's the difference between Kirkpatrick's 4-level, Phillips' ROI model, and Thalheimer's L10 model? Those are 3 strong measurement tools, but we often only hear about Kirkpatrick's 4-level. Why? Does it mean that's the perfect one? In my opinion, no. It's the one that is just regurgitated over and over again because we're not doing our due diligence to figure out what's the right measurement tool rather than what's the easiest one that everyone keeps talking about. If I had to recommend one to take a look at, I would recommend the LTEM model. That's LTEM. Basically, Dr. Thalheimer took Phillips and Kirkpatrick, combined them like they had a baby, and then reversed them, and it's more modernized. I'm not saying that's the best one. I don't believe there is a best for us. And that's something that you have to take into consideration is so much of what we do is contextualized by our organization. I can tell you 500 things to do today, but if you go back to your organization and there's no learning culture, you have no support from leadership, and you're a team of one, you're going to struggle trying to move that big boulder up the hill all by yourself. What worked for me at General Motors didn't work for me at HSBC. What worked at HSBC isn't working for me at BDO. I have to first get in and spend a significant amount of time understanding what's the environment at play here, What's the culture like? What's the context of my situation? And the reason I'm sharing all that, to tie it back to my original point, you have to have a growth mindset and be open-minded that, hey, just because Keith said this is the way that it works for him doesn't mean that it's going to work for me. I've got to do the due diligence to figure out, does this work in my organization? So I think growth mindset would be my long-winded answer.
Amazing.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much. I also see that there is a question in the chat from Davide, and he asked, would you imagine in the future a product or service explicitly saying created without AI and being considered premium, a sort of handmade badge?
That's a very philosophical yet controversial question.
Well, if you want, I may add a bit of context.
Yes, context is great.
Yeah, I didn't want to go too much on philosophical thing, but also considering the reaction there was, that I think it's really exactly what I was thinking about. So the reaction is saying, okay, it's like you are preparing a cake. Would you be in favor of using a machine and the cake and the cream being perfect, or rather having a cake totally handmade? Okay, now the point is, if I'm going to a super 5-star dinner, probably I will have the chef pretending to be my grandma, only using handmade. So
Mm-hmm.
when we were thinking and mentioning the use of GPT or other AI technology, which of course are useful and can be an added value, I was also thinking, if there is a premium something that is totally handmade in the future, very specific, maybe very little, I don't know, something just coming to my mind.
My instinct response is, it depends on the requester and what they value. I don't think that we could I wouldn't be comfortable making a general statement, but here, and the reason I'm saying this is, corporations exist to make money. And we are often looked at as a cost center, even though one of the things I advocate for is that I want us to be revenue generating where we can. So if your business is requesting something and you respond to your business, hey, we can do this, we can give you this bespoke, beautiful suit that is going to look great for $10,000 and it's handmade, or we can give you this off the rack Zara suit that fits really good and it was production made and it's only $200. It's going to come down to what your stakeholder views as their value proposition, in terms of, is the handmade really worth the money, and what's the difference going to be? And I think the ultimate answer to your question is, it depends on the team that's building that handmade solution. So specifically from an L&D product, today, I don't think that technology and AI does our work better than us, but it is evolving so quickly that in 5 years, could that be the case? Is our function, like an instructional designer, going to be functioning the same way then as it is now? I don't think that it is. I think it's going to completely change. Now, that means we have to evolve as well. I don't believe that we are at risk of being extinct if we are trusted learning advisors or trusted advisors, because part of that, being a trusted advisor and having this growth mindset and being what I call a connector in the organization, there's always going to be business problems in the organization. And I see us as looking holistically across the horizon, solving business problems. We just happen to be solving the business problems through the lens of L&D. But if you were to ask me how would I describe myself, I'm a problem solver. And L&D is just the tool and lens at which I use to solve those problems. So I believe that the opportunities for us will always exist if we can adapt to how we can solve the business problems.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So we have time for one last question. Achilles says, I know it's a broad question, but any thoughts, resources, tips on project-based learning, for example, offering methodological support, coaching, ad hoc learning intervention to team solving real-life challenges as a way to get closer to the business? Okay, so sorry, I rephrase it. Okay, any thoughts, resources, or tips on project-based learning as a way to get closer to the business? So, for instance, yeah, coaching, ad hoc learning interventions.
So the answer is yes, all of those are good. What I would actually encourage is uh, proactively conducting qualitative research with your organization. So I can say it a different way: design thinking, or empathy research, qualitative research, understanding, a listening tour. All of those are the same things. When you wait for a project to come in and use that as a means to get closer to the business, we're being reactive. So we're now reacting to a situation that's in front of us. And yes, you can get closer to the business through this, but it's a bit siloed and myopic. And there is a specific reason and potentially biased reason of why you're trying to get closer to the business. Why not proactively conduct research with your organization? So I'll give you an example. About every 6 months, I pick a small subset, maybe it's 5%. I don't want to give you a percentage because it depends on the size of your organization, but we'll go out and we'll talk with, I don't know, maybe 50 people in the organization. And these are very generic questions. We're trying to understand, is there any challenges are you having at work? What are those challenges? What could help you be better? What are some struggles? Just spending time getting to know them and gathering this data. And now with ChatGPT or Gen AI, you can synthesize your data like that. And so you can go out and proactively be collecting all this data, compiling it, putting it into your own little database, and then using that to help you figure out what problems might exist and building the relationships with your business. So long story short, proactively, you can conduct a design thinking initiative, or if that feels too formal, just go out, do a listening tour, gather that data back, start storing that data, and then use Gen AI to help you do a thematic analysis or a needs analysis on what you've uncovered.
Amazing. Thanks for the nice tip. And so I would say let's wrap it up. I see your message, Keith. So if you enjoyed the book, please leave a review on Amazon for kids. I'll definitely do it. Okay, now I'd like to share another poll to close up as we started. Okay, I see I have to create, sorry, a new poll. So, sorry, 1 second.
While you're doing that, I'll just reiterate, book clubs, it sounds like, I want to say, a basic tool for your organization. I know you're already bought into it because you're here at this book club, but I think, tend to think like we have to have this only group of like-minded individuals kind of externally replicate this internally. A book club is such a great learning experience, and not just for L&D. So I'll give you an example. We brought in a facilitator a couple of weeks ago, and it was on, I don't know, Leading with Heart or something. And this person had a book, and they gave 25 copies of the book away. Well, Percipio, which we have, also has access to that book. So we're doing a large organizational book club on this non-L&D book as a way to create a community, as a way to have elaboration, generation, learning transfer. These are all three components of the science of learning. A book club incorporates all of those. So a book club is a really great tool to use that really reinforces the science of learning.
Amazing. Well, very curious to start experimenting with it, still to think how to bring it up, but it's a very nice and creative out of the box idea. So now you should be able to see our poll question to check out. And the question is, what is one thing that you commit to do this week to be a better learning advisor? Minutes to think about it. What is one thing that you learned today this week? Okay, I start to see, well, it's all splitted, the word cloud, but book, so the idea of the book club has resonated with many. Stick, so I think also the book is going to be something, a tip that is going to be implemented this week. And table, so I think also, yeah, the idea of making your own table. And yeah, with this, I'd like to close this session and to say, like, thank you so much, Keith. Like, you have shared very a comprehensive list of practical tips that we can all take and work around it. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And
I'd love to stay connected on LinkedIn as well. So please keep me posted on your journey. And if you have any other questions, feel free to drop them there.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks,
and
everyone.
have a nice week, everyone.